Yeah, I have personal things, but I can't use them because there's laws against that. You're not allowed to mention your own case, but I can hypothetically mention scenarios. You know what I mean?
Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. Going to hopefully have a chat with all of you, the whole 7 at the moment. I'm hoping more people will come online as we progress. I'll be having a chat tonight with Michael, who's got something that he needs to say about the family court, and he and I will have a conversation about that, and we ask you to join in on that conversation if you wouldn't mind. Okay. Just got a few things I want to talk about before we get to Michael, and that is what a troubling week it's been. And I didn't do a live feed last week for varying reasons, mainly because I forgot. But apart from that, I didn't do a live feed because there wasn't anything specific that I needed to have a conversation with you about. But during this week, there has been. And there's been 2 incidences which I need to talk to you about. And if you wish to comment about any of these, please let me know. The first is that I had a call from someone who I'd known for quite some time, had worked with her and her daughter a couple of years ago. And their issues were that they were concerned about the placement of one of the children. There were 2 children, placed one of the children back with the father, whom they were objecting to having been, or they suspected was a pedophile. As a result, though, the department rejected the parent and the mother of the children, rejected their claim that they were concerned about the behaviour, potential behaviour. There were strong indicators that abuse was taking place. The department chose to ignore all of that, and as a result, they at one point were so fearful that the children were going to be returned to this abusive parent, they fled to another state, and then as a result of that, they were picked up. Obviously, the children were returned, and one of the children was placed with the father, who last week was arrested for pedophilia. And I think that one of the biggest problems we have is that someone can make a notification about a scratch on an eye and that child can be removed. But when parents are emphatic about something as serious as childhood sexual abuse or their suspicion thereof, they are ignored. Now, the reason why I think this happens is that, and this is the case with these particular women, is that they're extremely articulate, they're incredibly passionate, and they get viewed as delusional. So they're seen, because they're women, I think, they're seen as over the top, as hysterical. They're labelled as being irrational, not being sensible, and so on. And the result of that is that the department will dismiss whatever they have to say, regardless of their concerns, and they'll place them with somebody who seems to be more rational and sensible, probably because that person has stuff that they're trying to hide, which is their indecent behaviour towards children in this particular case. I think that eventually this is going to come out, and one of the issues is transparency, and it will be about how the department takes responsibility for what has happened with regard to this child. Now, one of the other issues which I am particularly concerned about is the fact that if a child dies in care, there is a coronial inquest. If a child is sexually assaulted while in care, there is not. and eventually the department will do their own evaluation. They will probably not tell the parents that the mother and the grandmother, they will not tell them how this came about in the first place, what was happening that actually in their minds caused them to make the decision they made, which put a child at distinct risk. And now, where does this child get placed? The child could be placed back with these responsible parents, the grandmother and the mother, and be safe. Should have been there in the first place. But the question here is, will the department do that? I can guarantee you they won't. Because they're gutless, mindless individuals who are more concerned about trying to maintain face than at least have the courage and guts to admit that they made a mistake. It just, if I had any hair to pull out, I'd be ripping it out right now, I can tell you. Because I am so distressed by the fact that these parents have fought to have these kids back, have told the department that the children were probably being sexually assaulted. And now, years later, after all the sexual assault has taken place, after these kids are going to now have to go through all sorts of counselling and heaven only knows what else. And one of the kids was living with him. He had access to the other one anyway. What's life going to be like for these kids about a decision that the department made, were warned about in the first instance, but nothing was done? Absolutely nothing. I think if you've got any comments about any of this, please let us know. As Simi says, thanks goodness he was arrested. Agreed, parents are always wrong. Yeah, there are some parents who are punitive, I get all of that, and there are some parents who are angry, certainly, I understand all of that as well. 90% of parents are genuine people who just want the department to act in the best interest of their children. I don't know how many people come to us and tell, that the kid at some point is being abused while in care. Kids who come to Access with their shoddy clothes, their hair not done, with bruises on their legs and their arms. And the department just throws their hands up and says, bugger it, we don't know about that, or they fell over. However, if they fell over while in these parents' care, as is a case that I'm going to refer to in just a moment, that they would have that child removed from them. They'd say, bugger it, we're going to take this kid because these are shitty parents. And because they're shitty parents, whatever it is that the parents then say about their concerns for their children simply get ignored. It's atrocious. And sometimes there has to be, I had a conversation with a social worker last week on one of the groups we were running, and a lot of what was said made sense, I think, to her, and she had worked in child protection. But I think she had a very restricted, what's the word? I can't think of the word now. But she had a particular focus while in child protection that did not consider all these other issues that we talk about here, that are paramount in terms of dealing with issues that happen to kids. Now, before I get to Michael, I just want to talk about one more case. So bear with me, everybody, because this really riles me. And this case I had talked about before, but this kid was taken away from his mother and the mother's partner, primarily because the father had kids that were in care. Now, I've known this father for many years. He's the most fabulous human being. He's worked really hard. He's the sort of guy, I reckon, with the right education, could probably educate others in how to parent kids. He's smart, he's done multiple parenting courses and whatever. And I was in at a meeting with his partner during the week, and she's really together. She was calm. She said, these are the things that I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about my partner because, I know how you think and feel about him. I wanted to talk about all these other issues. And lo and behold, the bloody workers, even though she had said, I don't want to talk about my partner, they had to bring him up. They couldn't help themselves. They are so negative towards the partner that it just oozes out of every pore of their skin. That just and I said to them at one point, how do you know all this stuff about this person? Well, we've read the reports. Have you ever met with this man? No, we haven't. Why haven't you ever met with him? You know, how can we assess somebody if we haven't met with them? If we're doing a psychological report or we're doing some sort of report, you know, we have to meet with the person to understand who they are, to hear their story, to you know, so that we can be reasonable in our assessment. So how are you guys being reasonable in your assessment of this person, this man, if you've never met him? You've only read reports that other people who have extreme biased views towards him. How are you not focusing on these issues? And lo and behold, like clockwork, at the end of the meeting, they said, oh, well, there is another incident we'd like to talk to about. And I don't often sit there stunned in these meetings, but in this particular instance, I kind of was, because it was almost predictable that they were going to find something about this guy that would further justify their reason for having them removed. And I came back I met with him afterwards. I said, look, you know, your alternatives here are leave the relationship, you know, both of you split up, because at the end of the day, they're going to attack you. And as long as you're in the relationship, so be it. I don't know what decision they've made about that, but there is this inability to be able to rationalise and assess situations based on their internal processings. That is, social workers are able to process what they're seeing, how that's presenting, what they're hearing from that person, what they're now understanding about him or her based on what they're now knowing, not what they've been told before or what's been written in reports. It's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious, and it's bloody appalling, and it's an embarrassment. And if you're a social worker out there thinking this is a good way to practice, find another job, because this is not the way I understand my profession should be working in order to help parents. You're gonna put a child, in this particular case, not to mention the one where you allowed this child to be live with a pedophilic father. Not only that, you know, in this case, you've got a 3-year-old kid that you're gonna put on a GOM18 at some particular point when he would be quite safe with the people that he was living with. Bizarre, absolutely bizarre, and this is the reason why I'm bored. This is it. And now that I've had my rant, I'm gonna introduce Michael, and perhaps Michael and I can have a rant about the same sort of stuff. So here he is. I just got to find him here. Hi, Michael. How are you, buddy?
Good, mate. How are you?
Good. Sorry about the rant, mate, but I need to go.
It's uncanny that that's what you chose to rant about.
Yep, I just lost your sound, I think, Michael. So can we just come back?
Is that better?
There we go. That's better. Yep, thanks.
Okay, yeah, I can even answer some of those questions for you, mate.
Go for it, mate. Get in the conversation. I'm happy to hear what you have to say.
The system's a joke, mate. The whole system is a joke. From your child protection department to the family court. And best thing about it is hardly any of them are held accountable for any of the decisions they make. They can make any decision they like, and they usually make it on their own opinions on how things should be, and they're not accountable if they've made a mistake. It's terrible. I can rant on with a million different examples of this. Are you familiar with Haley's story? I think it's Abby's story. Abby.
I think you were before we started. I think you were going to talk to me about it. I probably am, but Abby, I couldn't remember it when you were talking about it. So talk to us about that, and then we'll have a discussion about it.
Well, Abby's project, it's old news. Some people would know about it, I'm sure, because in 2019, there was a Royal Commission. Abby's project was at the front of their argument on where the mistakes are being made and how the mistakes are being made. Coincidentally, Abby was forced to go access visits to her father, who was a pedophile and sexually abusing her and even the other kids in the street. What makes it worse was that one of the other kids in the street had him charged and he did 4 years jail for it. But the police said that they didn't have enough evidence to charge him for Abby. So she then had no, like they didn't believe her that she was abused by him. But the twist of the matter is the girl, her testimony was that she was abused by this man while she was in the same bed with Abby. And he was convicted on that crime. But still, Abby was sent there. Abby has now committed suicide because of mental illness at about 17, I think it was.
So, Michael, um, where were the authorities in relation to that? Do
Well,
you know?
that's the problem. Once you're going through the family court system, everybody else is shut out. You are not even allowed to, at times, take your kid to see a child psychiatrist unless they have sent them to their child psychiatrist. And all of them, with the reports they make, none of them are accountable for any mistakes that they might make. It, it's
I
it's
guess
heartbreaking. If you, I'll send you a link for Abby's project. If you haven't read it,
drop a link into the bottom of this Facebook feed when we finish it tonight,
yeah, I
mate,
will. Yeah,
and
yeah,
that,
because
so that
it's
everybody's got a
amazing.
copy to that. I
What
guess
what
one of
Yeah,
sorry,
oh,
go on.
sorry. One more thing. What amazes me the
Yep.
most is we've got Abby's, which was the forefront of the whole Royal Commission. It's what their evidence was. But then, in addition, they had Violet's story, Sally's story, Chloe's story, Katie's story. I could keep going. There's about 30 or 40 names here, like Sally, Jacob, Tom, all in the same family. All of these kids have been through this. None of them were listened to. They were all put in harm's way because of a system that cares more about money and themselves than about the children that they say they protect.
Yeah, and I think that again, this is an instance where the voices of children are not heard,
Certainly not.
right? And the voices of concerned parents are not heard. This is so it doesn't matter whether it's the child protection system, Michael, or whether it's the family law court. Any environment where the voices of children need to be heard and the voices of also concerned parents who are often marginalised as a result of the system itself, and I don't think that's in my view anyway. It's not a genetic, it's not a sexist thing. It's really just parents. I don't know whether you've been in this situation, but you've wanted to complain about what you think's happening to a child, and your concerns about that, and you're ignored because you don't have the same narrative as the one that either the magistrate is being told or the family court's being told by usually a dominant parent in that situation or whatever. But look, you've got some instances also. You've got some views around the family court, and I'm just wondering if you want to have a chat about them for a moment.
Yeah, yeah. With all these departments, there is holes in them. The family court, child protection department, they all have the same problem because they are all built from the same government body, and it wasn't really thought up very well. I'm just looking for it now, where the Royal Commission had findings on what they have advised that it needs to be changed because it's dangerous to the children. And I'm just trying to get my view, my big head out of the way so I can read some of this. But some of the things that you just touched on, as I said, I'm going to send this to you, are in the recommendations to be changed. These recommendations were made in 2019. Still, nothing has been changed. They still haven't even, they're starting to talk about maybe we should do some of those things that were on that, but they still haven't done it yet, which is, it's really, really sad because there's children every day being judged. Whoops. Uh,
Someone loves you. Someone loves you, mate.
yeah, yeah. Hold on,
You
just
should
just
always say.
turn this off.
I usually say to people before they come
Turn your phone off.
A feed, turn your freaking phone off.
It's off.
I've made sure mine's off, so I'm not going to feel like a hypocrite because it won't ring.
Mine's
So there you
gone.
go.
Yeah. So
But
yeah,
I think, but you're right. There are always there. Like we've had so many inquiries. We've had I think the number's up to 44 inquiries in the last 15, 20 years here in South Australia. Maybe it's a bit longer, but we've had so many inquiries, and you wonder what is it that they implement. So I reckon they implement changes that are relatively easy to implement. So one of the changes was to the family court, so that it would become look like the magistrates' court, so they could hand over some of the cases to other magistrates. So that was certainly one of them, because that's a relatively easy to do. To train. Okay, let's take a difficult one.
I can give you a few.
Pardon?
I can give you a few.
Yeah, well, give me a few in a second.
Yeah,
But one of them that was that people should be trained who work within the court system around family violence, child sexual abuse, and trauma, those sorts of things. Now there is no evidence that training has taken place. And then, mate, if we're going to do that sort of training, why wouldn't we have an evaluation process to see whether or not that training has actually been effective? So, why aren't... so would we see more sensible approaches to around domestic violence? Another way we're dealing with perpetrators should be different, perhaps. The way we're dealing with the victims should be different. Childhood sexual abuse, which family courts don't even deal with, they leave that up to the states to deal with that through child safety and child.
That's right. Yeah, they don't talk to each other. Yeah.
No, they don't. So and that's one thing that ostensibly should change. Perhaps, absolutely, perhaps, the family law court should have their own division that deals with child protection issues once they're brought to the family law court. Or there should be a general... One of the things that we thought about at the party at one point, Michael, was to actually have a federally based child protection system, so that it could take care of anything that comes through the family court, anything that comes through any of the state courts, or maybe the state courts could be abolished and it could be just one court in each state that's run by the federal government that oversees these particular problems, and that therefore that funding should come from the federal government. So there's lots of ways, because like, who in the hell wants to be a minister for child protection?
Oh, I wouldn't want to be.
No one does. It's fraught with danger, man. Fraught with
exactly.
danger. So, but anyway, there are different ways that we can approach or should be approaching this. What are some of the ideas that you've got that you think might be helpful?
Well, we're just normal guys, and you've just sat here and rattled off about 4 or 5 of the recommendations of the Royal Commission. Now, if it's that easy for us just to think of it in our heads, what the hell did they need a Royal Commission for to point these out? And then after they're pointed out, why have they not been addressed?
Because Michael, they don't talk to people like you and I.
That's right.
Normally.
They don't care.
That's the issue. They talk amongst themselves.
That's
about
right.
what they should be doing. They don't look. They don't even go to stakeholders. Those people that use the system.
That's right. Because it is so much of a money grabber. It's unbelievable. Every time 2 parents go to court, it's on average about 70 to 120 grand each. You have all of those people in there. They are who are feeding all of the court staff, the lawyers, the judges, the independent lawyers, the family report writers. They are all under that money, and they all suck that money out of people. That's why they don't want it to change. Like one of the recommendations from the Royal Commission was that media coverage of a case should be allowed to be reported. At the moment, nobody is allowed to report anything that is done in the family court. If a reporter reports on a case and an outcome, they've broken the law, and they can be charged for that. Now that keeps them under a blanket, so nobody sees what they do, and they don't have to be held accountable for anything that they've done. That was another one of the recommendations of the Royal Commission, that it needs to be changed, that the judges, the independent children's lawyers, and the family report writers need to be responsible for their decisions. They make decisions like sending this poor Abby back to her father, and now she's dead. You know what I mean? It's an absolute joke. And I can't believe that people in this day and age can go and do any sort of job and not be held accountable for what they put out in their employment. It's because end of the day, that's what it is. Employment. They're employed to do a job. If they don't do it, it doesn't matter. They don't get into trouble for it.
But the point there is that there's this thing about transparency and lack of accountability, though, Michael, because who within this system would keep people accountable? For example, who's going to say that the decision you made to return this child to the father eventuated in a child suiciding? Who in their right mind is going to be the arbiter of that? No one.
That's right.
Because then they have to admit fault, and once you admit fault, you're libelous. Once you're libelous, you may have to pay up. Whatever.
That's right. Yeah.
But you see, it's also criminal neglect. I think that some of the things that we're talking about in relation to, for example, having a child returned to somebody who proves to be a pedophile, that is criminal neglect. But no one.
They went to jail for it too.
Yeah, absolutely. The person who made that decision should be jailed. But then they'll say, well, we don't have a crystal ball. How are we to know that? Well, because you're given the friggin' evidence to start with, But how are we going to make that? We don't have a crystal ball. The point is, the department, in my opinion, the department always has a blinking crystal ball. They can say this is a bad parent, will always be a bad parent. This is a parent that's been in DV relationships, always will be in DV relationships. They produce the crystal ball all the friggin' time,
That's right.
So we need to find ways, I guess, for people to be accountable. One of the ways is for us here, mate, love your shirt. Love your shirt. Thank you for showing that off. Right? Yep. People can buy them off our Facebook page or our webpage if they wish to go.
That's right. They're cheap. They don't cost them much at all, and they go to a good cause.
And they look great too, don't they? There's the jacket, the collared one as well. And there's the hoodie. There's the
That's right. That's my next purchase, actually.
Yep, you can even have a logo done on your underwear if you so desire. We will fit you there. But I just want to say one thing too, Michael, if I may, about. I just want to say one thing. I'll get myself into trouble if I carry on like this. But I just want to say one thing about some of the comments that are coming up. Firstly, thanks everybody for your comments. I really appreciate it. It's great. We've had lots of people come on board tonight, and it's refreshing to see so many people joining in the conversation. I just have to say this though: when we make child protection or family court issues a gender-based issue, that is, fathers are not being heard, mothers are not being heard. As soon as we make it any of those sorts of issues, you've lost the argument. Seriously, guys, you've just lost the argument. We've got to make it about the decisions that people make, why they make those decisions, and keeping them accountable for making them. These are the issues. We've got to stop talking about, because you're a father, you're so hard done by. Because you're a mother, you're also so hard done by. There are varying reasons. I speak to just as many women who are suffering from the family court and some of the decisions that are made there as I am men. So, don't do it. It's really damn unhelpful. Let's talk about the issues at a different level apart from gender. I don't know whether you agree with that one or not, Michael.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Yep, thank God.
Yep, wholeheartedly.
So stacks of messages coming through. You probably can't see them all there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get onto them now. That's what I'm preoccupied with. I'm trying to find.
So statements like Stuart, this is what I mean. Statements like all fathers. No, not all fathers are considered perpetrators by feminist-run services. They are not. Christian Family Court is what we need. Christian family court. Get out of here. You've heard what the Roman Catholics have been doing for the last 100 years. I can guarantee you, buddy, the last thing in the world we need is more Christians telling us how we could be abusing children. No, sirree, Bob. And if you don't like that, Stuart, stiff shadow, I don't care. But all fathers are considered... No, they're not. I've been through the family court, and I lost my kids for 6 years, mate. Woman, the ex went and travelled interstate, met up with a guy, nipped off interstate, didn't see the kids for years. So don't talk to me about... And I don't sit down there and blame her. I don't, because that was years ago. I have the greatest relationship possible with my kids these days, those two kids. So don't deliver that crap to me, because it just doesn't work. And I went to court, and I had a judge who was just more than reasonable. I represented myself, and we had a discussion, and she didn't turn up on one occasion, and that was it. I still didn't get to see my kids, though, because I couldn't come back. So don't make it a gender issue. That's all I'm saying. It's just...
No.
Don't use the word like all fathers. No. All fathers don't have to... I didn't have the same issue that a lot of other people have had, you know? My issue was probably worse because I just couldn't see my kids. And we talk about parental alienation and shit. Man, I know what that feels like. I've been on the other end of it for years. But this is the thing. Well, I sound like I'm raving here, but I am. Because we can make decisions about how to behave that eventually turn out in our favour if we're smart about it. And I think I didn't realise how smart it was at the time, but I chose effectively never to put down my ex, regardless of what she'd done. Never. Right? And never did with my kids. And my kids eventually had to find out who I was on their own, which they actively did. And it was a great outcome because there wasn't this garbage that I'd delivered around their mum. They worked that out for themselves. So it's everybody, and I think that I need to say this. Everybody's case is different. Everyone. Not one case resembles the other. It doesn't. There might be similarities, but they're all different. You know, one of the things that annoys me the most, and sorry, I'm raving a bit more, but I want you to come in on this, and this is finances in the family court. Often, not always, but often, the person who has access to the most money is often the one that will win in the family court. You know, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same with the criminal court. You know, if you've got a fair bit of dough, can afford the best lawyer and the best barrister, there's a good chance you'll either get off the crime or you will get a minimal sentence, right? But the poor bastard living in a hovel somewhere in the north or south of the city, they will get the worst lawyer and probably get the strictest sentence, right? And in the family court, the same things apply. And it's all about the money, isn't it, Michael? Would you agree?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I read the other day that up to 20% of people go into court without a lawyer because they can't afford one, and they have to self-represent. It is all about the money. Whoever walks in more polished and looks like they've got more money will be taken more seriously, and that's usually where the children will go. It's sad, but it's true. And in my view, it's because they are generating an income for the family, for the family court. You know, without people like that, they don't have an income. So they'll drag a case on too, just to make more money out of it. It's all about the money.
And I just want to say one other thing here. So Stuart's having a great time. He's having a go at me, I think. But so he says there are no services for fathers. There aren't. What Stuart? What service do you want? Like there are. I know this for a fact, buddy. So there are plenty of courses out there for anger management, if anger is an issue, for conflict resolution, if conflict is an issue, for parenting, if parenting is an issue. I used to run a course for Relationships Australia, which is a very successful course on separation and divorce. You know, so don't tell me that there aren't courses out there. The problem, buddy, is that you're just not looking or looking hard enough. What do you expect? Most people will say, I don't know whether you've heard of this one either, but most people think, okay, I'll raise the issue. So they'll say, she abuses me. Normally, the guy will say that I'm the one who's a victim of domestic violence. And because I'm a victim of domestic violence, there isn't any place that I can go. Well, I've got a flash for you, buddy. These days, I'll tell you this for a fact, if you're a woman also in a DV relationship, there are very few places that you can go to as well, because those that are there are already full. So don't give me that story. Oh, Catholics aren't Christians, Stuart says. Oh, well, must have. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, Stuart. I'll have a chat with the Pope next time we're in conference and ask him whether he thinks he's a Christian or not. Stuart Everson, he couldn't be more. Oh, I guess you're saying that. I know he's saying that, Katrina, about me. Approaches Tony, relying on them to lead to confirmation bias. That's true. Hey, thanks, Kate. Kate, I love that. Relying on them leads to confirmation bias. Holistic informed assessments are vital, and they are. And we know that if you work within the area, this is not you don't have to be a rocket scientist, Michael. As you said before, I think one of the most profound things said tonight was that people like you and I can understand what's wrong with this system. Why can't other people tune into that and do something about it? Don't you reckon?
Absolutely right. And we're not the only ones. You know, I've got friends who are male and female that have all been through the same thing. They have a system that they stick to, and they religiously stick to it. And I don't know why. I don't know why when they know that a child is in danger, they won't fact check. They won't do anything about it. They will just run it through the system just like another job. And it really amazes me. Like the stories that I've heard, so the people that have been affected, it's right. It's crazy. It's every day until those recommendations are followed by the Royal Commission. Nothing's ever going to change. It'll always be the same. They've got people that work for the court who who write the family reports. They're biased because they work for the court. We need independent people, and this is what the Royal Commission has suggested too. We need independent people to assess the child. And now,
but
for
even
half an hour, they assess them.
But Mark, they do. I've known people that have had assessments done and never ever met the assessor. But
that's right.
I also, what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, do remember this though, is that if you're writing a report for the court, you are still, and you're supposedly independent. That is, you're not employed directly by the court. So you get X amount of dollars for writing a report. Remember though that if you write a report that is negative and doesn't fit with what the court believes should have been done or said, you may lose your contract. So there's still this sense of obligation to write reports that are in favour of what they believe the court wants to hear, even if you're independent. So the question there is, how do you, I think you should put people on consistent contracts over a period of time and have someone independently review whether those contracts get renewed, not based on what the courts may think or not think about those persons, the types of report those persons are writing. I also want to say, thanks, Katrina. She says we need to unite, not divide. That's true. And therefore, we need to stop having conversations about gender and start talking about the other issues, because they do divide us. And someone also raised an issue around grandparents, which was really great to see, because grandparents often get left out of this conversation, Michael, to a large extent.
Sure do. Yeah, they sure do. You know?
Yeah.
And the rest of the family.
Yeah, and extended family, don't they? Because sometimes uncle and aunts and others have just as much investment in how this child is raised as do the parents, and particularly some cultural backgrounds, whether it be Greek, Italian, Pakistani, Afghanistan, whatever it be, or whether it be indigenous in particular. And those people often are left out of the conversation because they're not included and they're not a party to the proceedings in the beginning.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. And they're not even thought about the same with the children and their minds, their needs and wants, their concerns. They're pretended to be listened to, but they're not listened to. They um they just skim over the top of it, throw it out the door, make their quick 100 grand out of this one, and roll it over to the next one.
Right. Okay. And Stuart is making me laugh now. Is getting quite humorous because he said that. There you go. You said it. Relationships Australia. I don't know what he's got against RA. They're a good organisation. And then he says you're a Mason. That'd be the last organisation I'd belong to, buddy. I can assure you, I'm not into secrecy. So you're a dick, seriously. Stuart is relying on God for divine intervention rather than services. Well, that's encouraging. I wonder whether he's got a direct line to the Lord. If so, let us know what he says on these issues.
Yeah, get him to ring the family court too.
Yeah, could just ring the chief magistrate.
Yeah, just say, hey Blake, let's just change everything around, eh?
Shared to my group in the. Thank you, Katrina, for sharing that. I do appreciate it. DIDS, which is Dads in Distress Group. DV courses, anger management courses, and parenting courses for both men and women. Thanks, Kat. Great
Triple
stuff.
P.
So they are out there, you see. So we could just go to this group, and these people will come up with all these wonderful ideas. Okay, fabulous. If you've got any other helpful comments to make, Karen says, in the best interest of the child is the best interest of the courts and lawyers' pocket more so. I agree. They're the ones making the money from all of this. I had both parents taken from me. That's a great point, Karen. That's a great. Don't you reckon, Michael?
Yeah.
You know, that notion that a kid, through the decisions made by the family court, a child.
That's right. They lose their parents.
The court separated both these parents, I guess, in a sense. And lo and behold, a child grows up without both parents for whatever reason.
Heartbreaking.
Or it could be where the kids get put with another family member too.
Yeah. That's heartbreaking.
They're in dispute, you know.
And usually the kid isn't even told when they're going to court where they're going. Well, you're not allowed to tell them where they're going or what they're doing. You've just got to take them there and load this on them as a surprise. You even threaten that you can lose them if you do tell them.
Oh, for God's sake, there's a guy here by Extine B. Chaco. Mate, these conspiracy theories give me the shits. Family Court is a covert child trafficking organisation that feeds off the blood of children. Moya Country, I think they're married, Family Court, child traffickers. What a load of crap. I don't subscribe to any QAnon theories. I don't subscribe to any theories in which I can't prove. You know, so no, that's just garbage. Get off, mate. Don't need that sort of crap. Someone said turned into a woman. Okay. Stuart said I got booted off Facebook. Good stuff. I mean, I'm rather enjoying these conversations. Sorry you can't see it anymore.
Yeah. I can't see it. I'm trying to find it.
Parental alienation is abuse, says Kat, and it's so true.
It is,
and the alienator has serious mental, and that's so true. You know, can I talk about this for a second, Michael? Is that all right? Parental alienation.
Yeah,
You've got something you want to add?
Perfect.
Just let me know. So, the thing about parental alienation is those. So this is a theory, so it's unproven, but it's based on some experience, and that is the people who do most parental alienating are those parents that complain about it the most. So those that complain that the other party is alienating them from the children are usually the ones who are also saying things to the kids that's alienating the other partner as well, or the ex-partner. And I just think it's actually, I'd love to have that theory tested, but I'm pretty sure that I'll be right.
Deja vu, man. Deja vu. Yeah.
Parental alienation also happens at an organisational level too. So we see it within not just the family court and the way sometimes lawyers and judges and other people gang up on a parent. We've seen that before. But often the kids aren't there to see that. But we also must remember that any documentation that we place before a court can later on be accessed by these children when they're old enough, when they're adults. And that in itself is a form of alienation. Anything that any professional says about a parent can be seen later on as detrimental to the parent based on the kid's view of that. Forget about Stuart Everson, folks. Can't be bothered with that guy anymore. Neither the conspiracy theorist stuff. Okay, just in closing, Michael, is there anything? It's been a great discussion. We've had a lot of people join us, so I've really appreciated it. Anything you'd like to finish with?
Yeah. Parental alienation. It's got a few dark areas too. Sometimes parental alienation is protecting your child from that parent. So it's thrown around that word a lot, where sometimes it's not the case. And don't get me wrong, to keep a child from a loving parent, the worst thing you can do. But sometimes that person isn't so much of a loving parent, they're an abuser. And the other parent is trying to keep them away from them, and they're being told that they're alienating that parent.
I know what you're thinking and what you're saying. I think that there's a difference between being a protective parent and an alienating parent.
That's right.
I think if I'm a protective parent, and it's like, okay, this case I raised at the beginning of this discussion, where the child was left with a pedophilic father, and the parents were not. That is parents being protective. That is not about them alienating. That is them with strict issues around their suspicions around the way a person is behaving. That is not parental alienation. That is being a protective parent. The alienation stuff happens when an adult says to a child, your mother's a drug addict, your mother's got mental health issues, your mother's crazy, your mother doesn't love you, your mother doesn't care for you, I'm the only one that cares for you, your mother's just the worst type of person you can have, or the father, it doesn't matter which way it goes, so I don't miss to be genuine. So, your father's a brood, is a bully, is assaulting, is a whole host of whatever it might be. That is alienating. When we're telling a kid something about their parent which they should not be hearing, because even though kids are really aware that there are children even though kids are fully aware that of some of the behaviours they may not like, it doesn't mean they don't love their parent. Right? I know that people that have been in really abusive families still love the parent that is abusive, and they don't need to be told, because if that person manages and deals with that behaviour and hopefully becomes a wee bit different, we don't want the child to always be remembering that they were abusive. We want to see the child try to accept their parent as that parent changes. Like a parent who's taking drugs, for example, and the kids are really aware of that. When the parent stops taking drugs, then we want that child to know that that's the problem that the parent might have had, but isn't the current problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, exactly.
And parent alienation just sows that continual doubt in a child's mind.
That's right, yeah.
And that's just unhelpful. So
it's a terrible thing. I came from a broken family myself, and from when I was 6 years old until now, I still remember every single word, every single like snigger at the other parent, or every single family member that had something to say, bad, just those little comments and little remarks. Every single one of them I remember from when I was 6 years old. They all do. It's the worst thing to do to them. It brings them up with issues in their head already, and then it also brings them up with a bit of disgruntled, even dislike for that person, because you remember everything they said about your mum or your dad.
And you raised a really good point, because it also brings up some gender issues. So it brings up issues in relation to how a child, say a female child, may view men, or it brings up issue around how a male child may view women based on the types of things that each parent has said about the other parent.
That's right. Yeah.
And that will determine what the types of relationships that some of these people might choose to have later on. And,
It does,
and the
if any.
behaviours. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the behaviours they might learn later. So none of that stuff's helpful. Michael, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, it has. I've enjoyed it.
I hope I haven't talked
In
too
a way,
much.
not that I enjoy the subject, but it's been a good topic to cover, because it's a topic that needs to change. It needs to be done, and everybody's got to speak up and say it's not good enough. You're not doing your job. Do your job. Do it properly, or get out and get somebody else who can do it properly.
Spot on. So thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. I'll just finish off with some words of not exactly wisdom, but I just want to say that there is on Wednesday night, we're holding a group which we've been doing for some months now, and the topic that we're talking about is adoption. So if you want to get involved with that, you log into our Facebook page on a Wednesday night, and about 6:30, 7 o'clock South Australian time, a post will come up which will tell you how to put the login details for that discussion on adoption. The discussions have been great, and we certainly hope that you will become a part of some of them with us. We've only got 2 more to go before the end of the year, and then we're having a break, but we'll be back having further discussions come next year. Join with us, become a part of the Child Protection Party, buy a shirt like the one Michael's bought, help to finance us, because we've got 2 elections coming up next year, a state election here in South Australia, a federal election, and it'd be nice if we could have candidates for both of those. At the moment, we haven't got much money, so it ain't happening until we are funded. So also go onto our Facebook page and donate, or onto our web page and donate to us there. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of this tonight. Really appreciate it. Glad you could be with us. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.
Are we offline yet, mate?
In a second, mate.
Yeah.